Well, I do. I charge a lot for that. Well, we're gonna do the pledge here real quick.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, it's time to get started. It's probably a couple minutes past time to get started. That's all right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome to our February meeting. Sorry we didn't get to see you all in January. It was very cold and very snowy. They ended up closing all the schools in the building the day that we were supposed to have our meeting here, so we ended up doing that virtually. So thanks to you guys that attended that virtually. But we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're excited because we have a great speaker tonight.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
All right, we'll start as we always do with the invocation of the pledge, and I'm going to go ahead and invite Pat to get us started. Don't trip. Oh, sorry.
Y'all please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a little poem here that I like to read. Since February, I call it the love. Y'all can see it. It's called love. Love is such a precious thing. It's fragile and it's rare. It damages so easily, so handle it with care. It's free to those who seek it. There's enough for all to share. The more that love is given out, the more there is to spare. I have a couple little poems here, little jokes I'm going to read. A woman was trying hard to get the ketchup out of the jar. During her struggle, the phone rang, so she asked the 4-year-old daughter to answer the phone. Mommy can't come to the phone to talk to you right now. She's hitting the bottle. A little boy opened the big family Bible. He was fascinated as he fingered through the old pages. Suddenly, something fell out of the Bible. He picked up the object and he looked at it. What he saw was an old leaf that had been pressed in between the pages. Mama, look what I found, the boy called out. What have you done there, dear? With astonishment in the young boy's voice, he answered, I think it's Adam's underwear. Y'all please bow your heads. Our Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord God, for all these ones that are here. We thank you for the opportunity to come together to fellowship. I pray, Lord, that you'll just bless these beekeepers, bless their bees, Lord God. I pray, Lord God, you'll bless the food to the nourishment of our bodies and bless the ones who prepared it. In Jesus' name, amen.
I can hear somebody's
Thank you, as always.
You got it.
And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and announce our speaker for the evening, and then we'll do the boring stuff after. As is our usual style. Shanna King is our state aviarist, and she's here to speak with us this evening about some of the current research and things that are going on with bees. Now's a good time to talk about it. She's been attending conferences and learning for us so that we can learn through her. We're so appreciative to have her here this evening. So let's turn our attention to Shanna King. Here, I'll let you get this one first. Everybody doesn't see it.
Not that they would have anything valuable.
Did you? You know what's really funny?
I can't decide whether to wear my coat. It's kind of cold in here a little bit. Then I feel weird, like, wear a coat.
I don't have a touch screen here. No.
I have this touch.
I know, I saw you do it, that's what I was.
Okay. Awesome. Let's see how cold it is. No, that's not too bad. Okay.
It's not too bad.
I feel weird. I feel constricted with that on. No, that is mine. You need a microphone. Is that better? It's a little bit, I was standing in the back to see how hard it was. It's kind of hard to hear back there, so I'll try to stay here. Does this come on? Okay. Because I'm a little bit of a roamer. All right, there we go. Before we get into this, I was just wanting to talk a little bit about two things especially. And if there's any questions, I try to talk about what's going on in West Virginia because that's my job and I'm the point of information. So for you to have that benefit. I'm getting a lot of calls now within the last 3 days now that people are getting out, the bees are getting awake a little bit. And dysentery, lots and lots of phone calls about dysentery. And I am encouraging you because I currently don't have any data. We haven't, since we're just now finding out in the last 3 days, collect some bees, at least 100 bees, from a hive that has dysentery, put them in some rubbing alcohol, and drain it before you ship them. But if you don't mind, we can ship some samples off of these affected hives to the Beltsville lab. And please, at the end of this presentation, is my email and phone number. If you cannot find that information, if you Googled Beltsville Honeybee Lab, how to submit a sample, it'll take you right to their page, and their mailing address is there. Please, we need to mail some samples off. Me being, our apiary program not being very large, it helps if you just mail it. It doesn't cost anything, just the price to mail that sample, and you will receive the results. I'm going to message the lab director and ask him to sample them he'll sample them automatically for Varroa and Nosema, but you can put that on the form. Please sample for Varroa and Nosema. Also put tracheomites on there. We're going to talk about that tonight, more about that in a minute. So that's one thing that I'm getting a lot of phone calls about right now. Another thing to be aware of is the court ruling in South Charleston, which was a huge victory. A beekeeper had brought suit against the city of Charleston when they tried to outlaw beekeeping within city limits. That lawsuit sat on the judge's desk for over a year, and the Department of Agriculture did come in on that case in defense of beekeepers and said that really cities don't have the right to regulate beekeeping. That was a huge win when the judge issued the ruling in favor of the beekeeper and the Department of Agriculture, because now beekeepers can use that in their arguments with other municipalities. So that's another huge thing that's going on. I'll probably think of something else as we go through this. There was something else I think that I don't remember. It'll come back to me. Is there any questions on the statewide level that you have before we get into this, which is national level research? You might, if anything comes to your mind, it doesn't matter if we're in the right topic, raise your hand, because if you're like me, my brain will forget. It'll be gone. Okay. This conference, the state generously allows me to attend each year. It is a wonderful opportunity, so next year is going to be a little different. But since COVID, we as in the apiary inspectors have been meeting with the American Beekeeping Federation as well as the American Association of Professional Apiculturalists. And who those people are really cool. They're the researchers. Those are the professors and the graduate students doing the frontline research. So their presentations can be intense and very energy draining, but worth it. Next year, we will not be meeting with the APF. We will be meeting as an association with the American honey producers, because we used to do that. As an organization, we used to rotate kind of instead of playing favorites, we would go with rotate around, but we're going back to the pattern. So, but we still have research, it just won't be at this particular conference next year. All right, let's go forward. It always helps to turn something on. All right, there we go. You're like, oh, here goes Shanda again. First off, I apologize. It is my job to be the kind of doom and gloom person, that someone's got to do it. So this mite, which I brought it, it's in the truck, I can get it later. I travel around with them now, dead. Is not here yet. First off, I'm just going to say that. But it is following the same path of distribution as Varroa did. So with the global economy being what it is, things are moving. We just anticipate that it will be here. And so a lot of the talks this year at the conference were concerning this mite, because we want people to be prepared. Having knowledge, the more knowledge you have, if you ever study IPM, the base of the pyramid of IPM, which is integrated pest management, is knowledge. And if you don't have a strong foundation, guess what happens? Panic. So we don't want you to panic. If it gets here, we're going to try to find out how to know how to deal with it. A lot of research now coming out of Auburn University's Bee Lab, which is exciting. We didn't get a lot of research from them prior to several years ago, but they hosted a workshop that I attended in, let's see, that was November? Yes, November, where we got a grant to pay for apiary inspectors to be there and some industry people, and that's all we did. We did AAA labs, education for like 3 days, and really got hands-on with them so that we could bring the knowledge back to you. So I don't know where Mr. President went, but if you want me back later in the year to do a AAA labs only presentation, we can do that. So Dr. Jeff Williams with Auburn and Dr. Jeff Pettis with the USDA did several talks on AAA labs. And in the World Organization for Animal Health, there are 6 reportable diseases. We have all of them except one, AAA labs. However, the problem is sometimes the problem in this age of information, we still have information trouble. The problem is we know that this mite is spreading and the countries aren't reporting it. So what's being delayed is we're having to glean this information from scientific literature and studies and samples. And so the mite is probably a little farther than what they're saying. We're not here. Let me jump ahead to this slide real quick. The farthest west that is recorded is that Georgia and that area of Russia. It is anecdotally in the Ukraine, which has been reported but has not been actually proven yet. But they are going to the Ukraine this summer. So let me go back. There's where Georgia is. So yes, okay, that's wrong. Okay, now let's talk about where are the risks. My slides are out of order, I apologize. Number one, so we're not talking the US. We don't have it yet, ideally. So where are the risks? Number one, intentional legal imports. So everything is on the books, you're doing it okay, and they get here anyway. And the weak point in North America, at least closest to us, is Canada. Canada did ban imports from the Ukraine. They were importing queens as of last year, as of June of last year. So in June of last year, they issued the edict to ban queen imports from the Ukraine. However, not that far from the Ukraine, and mites travel fast, is Italy. And so they're still importing bees from Italy. Yes, the border is still closed to the United States for packaged bee imports. And they did a new risk assessment last year and determined that it was still too risky to import from the United States because of small hive beetles, some American foul brood resistant, antibiotic resistant, and American foul brood amongst a couple other things. So they did a reassessment, but they still determined it was too much risk. Okay, so there. June, that's the edict that banned the bee imports. There's the number of queens they imported. So 2021, they imported 4,000 queens, 14,000 the next year. And prior to the ban, they had already imported 11,000. So at least that chain of potential might get in here is closed, but they're probably going to have to reconsider Italy in the near future. All right, risk number 2, unintentional imports. And this happens all of the time. This is where the Asian giant hornet that was out in the state of Washington, that's how it got here. That's how they anticipate it got here. That's how the yellow-legged hornet got here. There's a tremendous amount of ships, planes that land. It's impossible to monitor all of them. That's a crew collecting a swarm on a Navy ship. So all the time, if that ship is in port in Asia and the honeybee hive swarms and the swarm lands on the ship and the ship ships out before the swarm can leave, well, it's sitting there. We all know what bees do prior to departure of the hive is they gorge on honey. Well, it's potentially possible that they collect enough honey to build a small comb to start brood and have enough food to survive the trip across the ocean. And then when they get to the United States, then they can either swarm again, they can spawn from that comb. Bees could go into another hive. And so that is a very real possibility. The scary part is currently the USDA does not monitor ports, as in having sentinel apiaries. They do have staff that, like, there's a bee swarm reported on a ship, they're supposed to go kill it. But they don't have sentinel apiaries, which are just like, it would be like if I had an apiary at the airport because there was a lot of shipment coming in, and I would go monitor that apiary. Those don't exist, which is shockingly surprising. Some states have sentinel apiaries now that have ports and are monitoring on their own through the states. But state laws are very different regarding bees. Some states don't have the money to have large apiary programs. They don't have the time. So it's still a weak spot. Number 3, and this is sad, intentional illegal imports. Yes, there are people who smuggle bees. Now, this is not the United States. This is somebody coming from the Ukraine into the country of Georgia, I believe, or the other way around. They got caught with queens, and now they're made an example of. But some people, I know of people who have ordered them from overseas. And having someone ship them illegally, please don't do that. You know, no queen, no genetics, nothing is worth that risk. You don't want to be, I said, you want to be the pariah of the bee world, because that's what's going to happen. Okay. They'll probably burn your apiary. Let's see. Survival. What do we know about how trophies survive? They're slower to spread than Varroa are. We do know that. Because they depend on brood, the presence of brood, way more heavily than Varroa does, because Varroa has a stage in which they can feed on the adults. We know that they jam up between those plates and they feed on the fat bodies. Trophy does not have that stage. They will go out of one brood cell as soon as that adult bee emerges on day 21, run across the frame, and go down another cell if brood is present. 95%, so if we took a bunch of bees and they were in a package and there were trophy in there, 95% of the trophy in that package die within 3 days. To me, that's not super comforting. I'm like, what's about the other 5%? The remainder die on day 4. However, interestingly, they can survive 6 days on dry comb. Just if we had that frame right there, and there was trophy on that frame, they could survive 6 days on that frame. They don't know why. But the mystery is, there's still what we don't know and we need to know, is where does trophy go in the winter? That's something we still don't know. And that's important. That's a big part of their life cycle. They're finding no evidence, even in the winter, there's a tiny bit of brood. There's probably like 3 or 4, at all times, most hives have brood. But they have taken hives like that and they cannot find a single trophy, and yet they come back in the spring. So some of the theories are they have another host, when we talked about that before, because they were originally described as a mite on a rat. Do they have another host like that? Or are they doing something called, some insects can do what's called diapause, which is, it's kind of like a hibernation-like state in which they just sit there and they don't expend much energy and yet they're still alive. And they can either do that in an adult stage diapause, or the eggs can be like that. So are they hiding somewhere in the hive and we can't find them? And that's a possibility, but people are looking, I rest assured you. But that's something we need to know, because that's a point of where maybe we can do something about it. This is, I like this chart because it's a combination of, it's comparing what we know, and we're pretty familiar with Varroa. I mean, we pound that into people's heads. So how are they similar? How are they different? We know that Varroa feeds on adults and larvae, but trophy does not. It only feeds on the larval stage. And it does not require that post feeding. So Varroa has to feed in between. So when it comes out of a cell with an adult, Varroa has to feed on a nurse bee. It needs certain nutrients that they feed on during that process. Trophy does not need that. The egg-laying cycle is a little shorter, where Varroa is 30 hours between the female founders laying eggs. Trophy females are only 24 hours. They breed a lot faster, and in the countries where they both exist, Varroa usually is not a problem. It's trophy. So if we do get these, Varroa probably will not be a problem anymore. I thought this was interesting. Up to 50% of Varroa reproductive females are not reproductive, which means they don't lay eggs. I mean, we see them, but they never lay eggs. That number is much lower with trophy. It's only 30%, which makes them another reason why they breed so quickly. They both are parasitic on Apis mellifera. We're not originally on Apis mellifera. They are originally on some of the Asian bees. They reproduce both in the brood, and they both have viruses. All right. This one is talking about the growth curve of, and I apologize for the quality of these. These were actually photos from slides, so that's why they're a little uncrisp. Varroa is the bottom line there. That is how fast Varroa will multiply. The middle line is Tropicolaps in Korea. So the new data coming in, the last data that I reported to you was all from Thailand, which is very different from us. They're tropical. They don't have winter. They don't have a down season. Their bees are brooding all year long. However, some data's coming in from Korea. So you can see that the middle line, which is Korea, is a little lower than the top line, which is Thailand. Korea, the data coming out of there is going to be really interesting because they're more similar to us. So we should get more useful data from that. Thailand would be worst case scenario. Okay, monitoring for trophy. Up to now, if you've ever participated in honeybee survey, when we do what's called a frame bump, which is we take that frame and we bump it on a cookie sheet. And that's what we're looking for. That has been the go-to monitoring method to this point. However, you can see that bump method is right there in the middle. The reason it's right there in the middle, you'll see on the next slide. But it's not the most accurate. So we're trying to figure out when and if and when that this gets here. How are we going to look for it? Mouthwashes do not work really well. You can see on there. Alcohol washes, sugar shakes are like 1 out of 3. Why? They don't feed on the adults, right? That's why mouthwashes work for Varroa, is they have an adult feeding stage. The most accurate are sticky boards. So either if you have screen bottoms, slide that into the bottom, or you can slide one into the entrance with a screen over the top of it. That takes a little while. I had a question when we had our Auburn workshop, because as inspectors, we need to know, we're going to have to look. When it comes, we're going to have to look. And I asked them, have they tried a sticky board in combination with an oxalic acid vaporizer? Which I thought, well, that's quick. A sticky board would be accurate. Could the oxalic knock them off? But they have not tested that, but they're going to this summer. Uncapping brood is one of the most accurate ways. And I'm going to show you a cool slide. Oh, let me talk about this first, and I'll show you uncapping. This is both of them. So this is our sensitivity combined with how much time it takes. And time being not ideal. So you can see bump is right there in the middle. That's why it's been the go-to method is the average. But sticky boards take a lot of time. Sometimes if you're uncapping it in the traditional way, it takes a lot of time, but someone has developed equipment. Let me show you something cool. That's why I love Beekeepers. Either using a sharp knife or that little strip is a leg wax strip. They put it on the brood and they rip it off. And it rips all the caps off of the brood. And then you, across the frame, you blow out like that. And the air goes down into those open cells and the trophy run out. So I'm gonna have to justify buying wax strips. You're all gonna back me up if I get audited. But you can see they have a little camera there, and it's filming down onto the roof because trophy are so fast that you might not see them with your naked eye, but you can go back and look at that video after you've ripped that strip off and watch the trophy run and panic. That's kind of cool. So I'm anticipating this might be the method, so don't laugh at your inspector eventually if they get out leg waxers. Okay, this is a new technique they're working on. It's really neat and it's very non-invasive. Using those really long Q-tips that are just have a swab on one end. They'll swab like this back and forth in front of the entrance, inside of the entrance. We put it in a little sleeve and we mail it off. Now that costs money. And then they test it for DNA, trophy DNA. This is very accurate in Thailand where there's mites all year long. However, when they disappear seasonally, as you anticipate, it's not as accurate as they are when they're trophy there. Now, they are looking into, we're like, well, if we're going around and we're testing hundreds of yards, it's not economical. States can't afford that. It's just too expensive. So they're looking into pooled DNA samples, which means like We would come, sample all 15 hives in an apiary. They would put all of the samples into one, spin it out, and we know it's in the yard, right? So you were pooling it, you're only paying for one sample. So that's a possibility for the future. I'm gonna take a step back and tell you that no one intends on destroying colonies if and when it gets here. That's ridiculous, it doesn't work. It was shown not to work many times. When tracheomites first got here, they destroyed thousands and thousands of hives in Texas. And they still got spread anyway. You saw what happened in Australia. They destroyed tens of thousands of hives. And it didn't work. So management, slowing the spread. I anticipate that people who are going to be most affected will be commercial beekeepers for a while until we figure out, like, is it all over the country? Is it only in one place and we can try to eliminate it? A big focus of Auburn and some of the big labs is, can we figure out a method? I don't anticipate the answer going to be no to 100% kill them in a hive. Really, I'm an optimist, but I can't see a world in which that happens. But I think the worst case scenario will be quarantining commercial pollinators for a while until we figure out what's going on. Normal beekeepers probably will not be affected. All right, treatments. Here's the most recent, and then I'm going to add a couple of afterwards. The most effective so far, formic acid. So my suggestion would be to you is, if you've never used formic acid, that's Formic Pro or Monongalia Quick Strips. I recommend Formic Pro. It's less harsh. Try it out, like, so that you personally get experience with using that as a treatment. And brood breaks, of course, brood breaks, because they disappear when there's no brood in the hive. So a combination of those is amazing. So they're looking at Cajun queens for 24 days and things like that. To get brood breaks. Moderately effective, flumethrin, which I'll talk about in just a second. Fluvalinate, which is Apistan, the old Apistan. Disadvantage to Apistan, it accumulates in your wax pretty bad. And Varroa developed resistance to it, and it is anticipated that also Trophy will develop resistance. And Coumaphos, which is checkmate, the old medication checkmate. Not effective. Amitraz has not been shown to be very effective. That's Amphibar. And also Amiflex, the new medication Amiflex. And then Popguard has not been shown to be effective. More recent data, very recent, not a lot of it yet, but heat treatments seem to be very effective against them. I don't have a lot of experience with heat treatments, nor do I know a lot of beekeepers who use it, and it's relatively expensive, but also not doable for someone that's relatively large scale. Extended release oxalic acid, that's Varoxan. It's shown to be kind of moderately effective. I'm going to talk about flumethrin. Yeah, it's crossed out up there because it's not legal in the United States. So, nor is it intended to ever be legal. It is, and before someone goes on the internet, because I like to try to address this, and says, is flumethrin available in anything else? Yes. It's in it's in the Serestro flea collar. Don't put Serestro flea collars in your hives, because something else is in the Serestro flea collar, and that is the neonicotinoid imidacloprid, which is highly toxic to bees. So please don't do that. Okay. And this is a new website you may want to put in your, you may want to bookmark it and save it. It was developed by the Apiary Inspectors of America, and it's going to be the place where the most up-to-date information is available on there. It is being updated all the time, especially you can scroll down. It's got a trophy section, it's got different pests. So that is going to be a good source for you, especially if you need to teach to your new beekeepers. Honeybee pests. Okay, let's talk about something else. This is important, pay attention. There are 4 states at the conference that have found tracheal mites. They are coming back. Why? Well, there's 2 mite medications that work with tracheal that are pretty effective. One being formic acid products, which would be another benefit of you trying it out. 2, Apogard. It was thought for a while that perhaps oxalic acid was also effective. It is not effective against tracheal. So therefore, the more use that when we see oxalic acid increasing in use, tracheal mites are coming back. So I'm going to do a little reminder education.
Excuse me, did you say the more we use oxalic acid, the more you're seeing tracheal mites?
Well, usually when someone brings oxalic acid and they use more, they're using less of something else. So where people used to maybe work formic into their treatments a little bit, or Apogard, they're relying more heavily on oxalic, which is not effective against tracheal. So when you send off those samples, that's why I'm going to ask them to test for tracheal, because they used to test for tracheal and they don't anymore. So I think if it was shown to be that it's increasing in the states, that's why I'm going to write an email to him and ask him to please test for tracheal, because I'm curious. Because some of the symptoms, I was talking to a couple of you before, we see large amounts of bees coming out of the hive, dying in front of the hive, unable to fly. If you look close at them, sometimes this part is hard to determine. The tracheal mites will cause their wings apart like this. Bee wings are, and I'll show you, are usually connected. They have 4 wings, and the 2 are usually connected, but they'll be apart like that. And they're kind of disoriented. And another thing is, if you had a dead out and you noticed the bees don't appear to be in one cluster, they appear to be in a couple of different groups, that can be another sign that it could be tracheal. Okay, let's look at what it looks like.
You said there was 4 states? What states were they, Dina?
It was in the Northeast, actually, not that far from us. So it was like Massachusetts, Tennessee was one of them. I think Vermont was one. There was another one, I don't remember, it might have been Maine. But if they're there, they're here. We're just not trying to look for them anymore. This is what happens. So the wings are normally, they have these little hooks on the hind wing that connect to that little reinforced area on the forewing, and the wings will stay together. But in tracheal mites, the bees will hold their wings apart like that, and they do not go back together. Here's what the tracheal mites, so bees breathe through trachea, and if you already know this just, you can chime in. There's little holes on the side of the bee, so there's some on the abdomen, but there's some on the thorax as well. And a female tracheal mite is kind of neat. You've probably seen ticks do this on grass. So once she's bred, she'll kind of hang on the edge of a leaf, a tick will. Well, tracheal mites do the same thing, except they're on a hair. They're like hanging off of the edge of a bee hair and wait for another bee to brush by, and then she jumps on a new bee. Well, we see tracheal spike in the spring. Now you know why, because guess who's been touching each other all winter? The cluster. So the longer that they're in a cluster, the tighter they're in the cluster, tracheal mites can creep up. And I just want to make sure that what we're seeing may not be some tracheal. Here's some close-ups of some tracheal mites, what they look like. A bee's trachea. I like that picture right there. So here's what you do. I mean, if you wanted to look for it, or if I had copious amounts of time and lab support, you collect 50 bees that are still alive, that are crawling, either on the landing board or on the ground in front of the landing board, and preserve them in ethyl alcohol. And what we do is we cut you take the head and you pop the head off and you cut it, or you can just cut a little section of the trachea, and we look for the mites inside of the trachea, of the thorax, is the best place to look for them. What do we do about it? I want to remind you the old ways of treating for them, and they still work. And they're not that expensive. We can use menthol crystals, and that's what's in that little bag there. That's just like a little jewelry bag that's really cheap to buy. And you can buy menthol crystals on Amazon. I went and checked them out the other day. I put some in my cart. You want to put them in there on a warm fall day. You don't want any supers on there. You don't want menthol flavored honey. It's not going to sell. If it's below 80 degrees, you can place it on the frames, like in the photo on top of the frames. If it's above 80, because of how much that will fumigate, it's going to go in the hive, and they're not going to be happy about it, I'm going to warn you. You're going to place it on the bottom board so it doesn't fume too much down. The alternative way is shortening patty, vegetable shortening, or you can use sugar. You don't have to use shortening. You don't want to use shortening. But what it does is it gets on the bees and it's kind of greasy in there. The mites can't hold on and they fall off, and that's how that works physically. Or you can also start using formic acid or thiamine products, which is Apigard and Apilivar is the other one. The good thing about Apilivar, I believe it might have menthol in it, which is kind of cool. I've never used Apilivar, but I might this year. Okay, that was tracheal. Be aware, maybe incorporate some menthol treatments or one of the other treatments into your operation. This was Dr. Marla Spivak, and I didn't put where she was from. I said, I told Justice, and she does not need any introduction. But she was talking about if you want to introduce genetics, like it's something you should think about. I mean, genetics plays a part in everything. If you've never thought about bringing hygienics or encouraging them in your apiary, she was talking about how to do it without going crazy and killing all your queens, and how can I take advantage of what's already in my bees, or bring some in and then grow it. And she said some of the problems why we are where we are is we currently we only have one synthetic mite treatment. That's it. We have Apivard. That's all we got. We got one tool in our toolbox in that category. That's not a good thing. And I do understand a lot of the problems is the logistics of getting a new mite medication approved. It's crazy, it's expensive. Let's be fair, the market's not huge, they're not gonna get rich on this new mite medication, so there's not a lot of incentive to do it. And a lot of people treat all year long. That's all they do, they just treat. Or alternatively, not at all. And that's not a good thing either. So usually, life is not usually on one of the extremes. It's somewhere in the middle with everything. These are no different. And we're transporting. We have a nightmare situation, not that we can do anything about that. 2/3 of the bees in this nation go all across the nation every single year. You know, if trophy gets here in California in February, there's no point. There's not even going to be any point of even monitoring. We're just going to go straight to treatment. So what we do is going to depend on when it happens. And for some reason, there is some resistance to using resistant lines. So what can we do about that? How can we encourage some resistant bees in our operation without going crazy? First off, bring in some resistant queens. Just some, you don't have to buy 50. Bring in some resistant queens. And I try to do that every year. Like every year, I buy five or six queens and I bring them in. Next year, I'll buy something else. And that way I'm always kind of bringing in, yeah, they're going to breed out, but if you keep bringing them in, you get some good mixes. Then, this is where it's a little bit of work. You have to do mouth washes. You have to know who's the best. Then she didn't say why, but she picks the top 4% of her performers and she moves them to a special yard. She does commercial pollination, so she takes those to Texas where she can start early on breeding her queens, and then everybody else gets treated and goes to pollination to make money. So what you would do would be, I'm gonna pull my best queens, I'm gonna put them in one place, and then everybody else is gonna get treated and they're gonna make honey. So they're gonna make my money to support increasing my hygienics. Then she keeps doing mouth washes on those. And come spring, she takes the best 4% of those, and that's the ones that get made queens from, and she requeens the other ones. So it's not like a whole, we're gonna wipe the board, she selects her own best ones. What you're looking for, and she does it every year. So you should be over time increasing quality in your operation as you go. What you're looking for is not, we're gonna do a spot check and pick the best ones and that's it. It's over time. It's the best over time. Anybody might be having a good day, but it's good over time. Okay. That was a little bit of the good news. Now back to the bad news. The yellow-legged hornet. I'm here to report that it has not been eliminated. These are two gentlemen that were from Georgia and South Carolina. Right there where Savannah is the two states meet. If you remember my last year report, if you were here last year, they were found in Savannah, Georgia, and here's where they're from. The one with the red circle there's different kind of strains of it. That's the one that's in South Carolina and Georgia. What are they using for traps and bait? Anything that you could put, just like when we build our hornet traps out of 2-liter bottles, we could use that. This is a fancy one. I don't remember who made that. Somebody made that, but if you look up yellow-legged hornet trap, you can find it. Using dark brown sugar and grape juice. That's what they have. It lasts about 2 to 3 weeks. Once it starts fermenting, you need to change it. This year, Georgia set 1,243 traps, and South Carolina set 797 traps, but they're also using honeybee colonies as bait because these hornets, they're not at all like bald-faced hornets or European hornets. They love honeybees. They will eat them, like popcorn. Here's your numbers. They found in 2023, this is how you know what the situation is. This is the crazy part. 5 nests. In 24, they found 48 and destroyed them. South Carolina found 0 in 23 and 16 in 24. The farthest one being 20-some miles from the nearest nest in Georgia the previous year, so it's 20-some miles away. The pessimist in me says, I just don't see how they're going to stop them. Life cycle, reminder, they're like the other hornets that we know. The queens will breed in the fall. They go into usually a hibernation type state like our hornets do in the winter, and then they'll emerge and start building nests in the spring. They mate in September. This is in Georgia and South Carolina. I'm going to remind you, it wouldn't be if they got here, it'd be a little different. The first nest that the queen makes is called an embryo nest. And it's small. It's about the size of a tennis ball. She builds it by herself. It's a little bit of a different color than a bald-faced hornet nest. A bald-faced hornet nest is more gray. And even in Georgia, you're like, well, maybe that's the tree. Even in Georgia, they're more gray color. And the yellow-legged hornet is it almost looks like it's got a tan color in with the gray, a little bit. And they will build those in protected spots, like porches, under an eave, somewhere very protected, because you realize it's only the queen at this point. So she's very cautious and wants to be protected. Usually, once she has a couple workers, they will abandon, which is where it's really different than bald-faced hornets. They will abandon that embryo nest and move and build another nest called a secondary nest. And it's about the size right there. It's kind of the size of up to like a watermelon, soft bottom watermelon size. And it's kind of scalloped looking on the outside. Usually, they will abandon that nest and build a third nest called a secondary nest. And this nest is usually in the top of a tree, like 90, 100 plus foot trees. Tree type does not matter. They build anything from pines to oaks to anything. It is significantly larger in size. So it goes from that watermelon basketball size up. They can be like this big. About up to 9,000 hornets per nest. This is when they're in that reproductive stage. They're making queens and drones. They're on average, this nest is about 50 meters away from the previous nest. And they're a little bit difficult to find. However, they have not been shown to be aggressive towards humans, because really when they're big, they're way far away. I mean, if you went over and kicked it, I'm sure they would get you. But they don't come into interaction with them. But however, they do feed on these very heavily. Identifying characteristics. Size, they're about 2 centimeters long. They have a very narrow waist. The yellow legs is significant. The bottom parts of their legs is very yellow. And the fourth abdominal segment of their body is yellow. And if you want to follow the happenings of what's going on in the hornet world, I put 2 links up there. One is for the yellow-legged ledger. That's a tongue twister. And the other one is a Georgia Hornet Watch, and they both have social media accounts, and you can follow along and get updates and how many nests they've killed and how many traps they've set, and photos, and it's kind of interesting. All right, that's the hornets research. This is, last year I reported to you, Jamie can chime in here on the RNAi technology. This is using RNA to fight varroa, and the potential for this product is that it may also be used, it hasn't been developed yet, but to fight trimming, which is exciting. They've changed the name of it. Good. I didn't like the old name. The old name was Vadisana, and the new product name is Varroa, which sounds very, and that's easy to remember. If I can remember Varroa, I can remember this. No Varroa, Varroa. Greenlight Biosciences is the company. It should be on the market and approved by the EPA within the next 2 months. It uses RNA interference, which are small little bits of DNA, and it works to shut down protein production in the varroa mite, which makes it unable to reproduce. And then, therefore, that's how it works. It's fed to bees in a sugar syrup packet. That's the packet in the photo right there. You put it on top of the hive, the bees come up and feed. The varroa feed on them, then they can't reproduce, and then so your varroa, it should help you control your varroa. What they are recommending for it to be used as is not in the event of, oh my gosh, my mite load, I just did a mite wash and I got 67 mites. This is more of the early season preventative. It's not a knockdown treatment. And it's not meant to be used alone. So it's just another tool in your toolbox to be used kind of early in the season. It can be, it's used to conjunction with another varroa treatment later. All right, that was just a one slider. This was an interesting talk. It was talking about what are the economics of choosing a mite-resistant bee, because there's the belief out there that if I choose something that's going to, like a breed, like let's say coal mine or VSH or Hilo or whatever strain that you're looking at, am I taking a hit on honey production? Are they spending more time looking for mites than looking for honey or looking for nectar, right? So he was going to look at this, and this was one of the researchers out of the Baton Rouge lab. And he was looking at Hilo, which is a mite-resistant strain out of Hawaii, versus some commercial Italian strains. And this was in commercial apiaries he was looking at. 70% of the Hilo colonies in his study did not rise to the point of ever needing mite treatment. So he was monitoring the mite loads as he went and only treating when the loads got high enough to be treated. However, 47%, which was, I thought that's quite amazing just by itself, did not need treated. Italians did. But it was more, so more of the Hilos did not need treated. He didn't find any difference in honey production in the stocks. So there was no significant difference in the honey production. Where the significance happened was the location. Location, location, location. We all know some bee yards will make more honey than other bee yards. And that's just where they are. So that was where the significance was, not in the breeds. All right, predicting colony deaths. This was cool. The last part is really neat. So this lady was out of Creighton University, and she was doing different studies from around the world, and I'm presenting to you the U.S. data. The deformed wing virus and the presence of it is 80% accurate in predicting colony deaths, which kind of makes sense. Like, you're going to have more deformed wing. If you have more varroa, it's going to creep up. Also, some of the other very accurate predictors of colony death were the cashmere virus, Israeli acute viruses, and chronic bee paralysis. Interesting, I'll take a little side note here and tell you that our honeybee survey results come in, and I haven't had a chance to completely process them yet, but we had a lot of deformed wing virus in West Virginia last year, and nosema. All right, this last part's really cool. Vibroacoustic signaling, and when I was reading about this, Mike, I thought about you. For some reason, I thought that this was going to be something really interesting to him. It's measuring the sound coming from a hive. So really accurate equipment. You use little microphones or accelerometers to record the sounds inside the hive. And so they were using changes in those signals to predict varroa loads, which is really cool. Queen problems, which we know about, we can actually hear that. But the next one is what interested me. Colony death 3 months prior to the death. They can predict the colony's going to die by the sound in that hive 3 months before. We teach our new beekeepers that what you do now is affecting your bees 6 months from now. So it makes sense that something in there is going to be detectable. Like if we didn't treat them 3 months in, they're going to be able to tell. So probably going to the fall, they could measure whether that colony is going to die. Kind of neat. I could see a little sensor. So this is going to be marketed. I'm predicting it's going to be marketed. You watch. Viruses and honeybees. This gentleman is a professor at the University of Minnesota, and like anything else, we used to have Nosema apis, and now guess what? It kind of faded away, and now we have Nosema cerani as the dominant Nosema. Well, viruses are like that. Viruses drift. So when they're in a host, we have personal experience that when COVID happened, guess what? They kept reporting the new strain, the new strain, the new strain. That's how viruses do. When a virus is meant to jump hosts, it proliferates in strains. So we're going to see that. So in the United States, we're seeing deformed wing drift from, we used to have a lot of deformed wing A, now we have deformed wing B. In the old studies, before they knew that it was a deformed wing, they called it the Varroa destructor virus. If you've ever read about that, that's the same thing. It's the same. They found out that it's the deformed wing bee. But they think that it's not as lethal as A was. Viruses ideally will drift to something that infects but is not lethal. You don't want to kill your host. But of the 3 virus groups that's most common in bees, one was the Lake Sinai virus group, which I would have never, if you'd have told me, Shan, guess, I would have said deformed wing was number 1, but it's not. It's number 3. Lake Sinai virus is number 1. Sac brood is number 2. I was very shocked at that. We don't see a lot of, I do see it, but it's not really killing them. Notice it doesn't say it's killing them. It just says it's there. All right, here we go. This is Dr. Marla Spivak again. She's fantastic. She was looking at wild bees. This is a couple different, this is a multi-slide presentation. She was looking at wild bees, and we always hear there's kind of a sector that is very against honeybees, and you got the sector that's, it's not really known about, it's like, die wild bees. I mean, like, that extreme doesn't exist, but for some reason that extreme of anti-honeybees exists. And so we need always research to deal with that. And she was looking at wild bee abundance, so how extensive the number of species of wild bees are. And she found that the more wild bees and the more species that we have is positively correlated to honey production and honeybee in an apiary. So that means they're not really harming each other. So we're looking at environmental effects there. It's the location again, location. Location that supports successful honeybees also support a diverse and numerous wild bee population. Grasslands, bee forage crops like sunflowers, wooded areas, wetlands. Where she wasn't seeing that would be like intensive croplands, like corn, soybeans, which makes sense. We didn't see it in those.
Mm-hmm.
Her other talk was very interesting. Now, we do a lot of talking. This is where we might help the public a little bit, is we teach clover, fake clover. But what she was finding, what she said, and you can look up bee lawns. So bee lawns are several different species, and one of them is in that picture there. That's self-heal, I think. So supporting multiple species in your lawn, clover's good, more is better. More species are better. And I want to use this line. She said she was looking at bee lawns are where you're going to really, really promote native bees. Because she said honeybees shop at Costco and native bees shop at the farmers markets. So I'm like, yes, okay, and that's true. And so when she was doing the study, she was seeing all the honeybees going to the big crops, big sections and stuff, and the native bees were foraging in the prairie area or the grassland area, and they weren't really interacting very much. And I use that word, that's important. When we talk about honeybees and native bees, we want to use the word interact, not compete. So are they interacting or are they not? And when they were interacting the most was when the goldenrod bloomed. Because we know, we've seen goldenrod bloom, it's like Costco in the fall. And so all the honeybees get excited when the native bees love goldenrod too, because it's the last big source. So that's where the interaction happened the most. And how she knows that, remember what I told you earlier, when a virus enters a new species and is meant to proliferate in that species, we see lots of new strains developing. It is possible, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, when a bee lands on a flower, and a honeybee, let's say, and she has deformed wing virus, and she feeds on the nectar, she leaves virus loads in that flower. So if a bumblebee comes along or another bee and feeds, she can get that virus in her body. When she saw deformed wing entering into a bumblebee body and going back to the hive, that virus has not ever been shown to proliferate. It just stays the same. And therefore, she calls it it was like a dead end something. It means it's not going to proliferate in that species. Okay, and this was her last one, because you can't go to a pharmacy and get that talk without her talking about propolis. Because I would be disappointed if she did. But what she found was, there are value added, and I'm not going to try to pronounce those, so if you wanted to take a picture of the slide, value added compounds in honey that come from propolis. It's not in the flowers. We get compounds from our honey, or compounds from the propolis get put into the honey. So don't complain about your girls that propolize your frame so much that you break the frame, because it's a good thing. It can make your honey more medicinal. And that are only honey propolis, not in nectar. Okay, let's talk a little bit about pesticides and risk. Risk is interesting. Risk is, and I want to emphasize this because I take a lot of phone calls about pesticides and these. And really, the biggest effect that we see in West Virginia are not deaths. It's more accumulation, and you see side effects of it over time. Risk is has two components. It has toxicity of the chemical that they are exposed to. And that is a known thing. That's a known number. And there's nothing we can do about that really, except choose something else that's less risky. The second is exposure. Exposure is where we can have a difference, and where people who spray pesticides can have a difference. Really, the risk of pesticides to bees, everybody in this room, is low. It's high with commercial pollinators and people who are exposing their bees to mostly fungicides on a regular basis. So it's not something I think I should tell you be very worried about, because it's kind of low. However, he was taking these queens and exposing them to pesticides and found that a queen that was exposed to natural exposure levels of pesticides, things that they would be exposed to in real life, were 34% less likely to survive after emergence, 4 weeks after emergence, 38% less likely to lay eggs, and she had fewer viable sperm, killing her sperm and her spermatheca. However, really cool is that nurse bees, so you got nurse bees feeding on pollen, they're making royal jelly, they're feeding the queen. They filter out up to 99% of the pesticides before they feed the queen the royal jelly. So they're eating pollen that has pesticides in it if they're exposed to it, and their bodies are filtering it out. But however, the problem is the queens, and I thought this was interesting, are not just eating royal jelly. He thinks they are eating pollen. They will go over and eat pollen or bee bread by themselves, which is interesting. So they might have a higher exposure than we think. Okay, European foul brood update. We saw a lot of it last year in West Virginia. So if you had European foul brood last year, watch your colonies this year. This was again by Dr. Peter Fowler of Michigan State, and he was finding that there was really no evidence of terramycin resistance that he could find in any of the foul brood strains, European foul brood strains. However, having said that, all of the strains can survive treatment. So it's not completely killing them. They're not resistant, but it's not killing them. So if you've had European foul brood, you can come back. Watch your colonies. Viroxan report. This is lots of interest in this. This is your extended release oxalic acid product. And it is recommended For use, they're recommending it at the end of the honey harvest season. So pull your honey, the bees are probably brooding down a little bit, and that's when you use it. And it's been shown to be 92% effective in this study. This was a USDA study, another Auburn study. However, you could see a reduction in the adult bee population 3 weeks after use. That's what it looks like there. That's a cardboard strip. I think this might be one of my last ones. This gentleman, if you are interested, please look him up. He is doing a lot of fantastically interesting research on medicinal uses of honey. And I'm glad I haven't eaten recently because he was showing like wounds and everything. But it was fascinating. I get this question a lot, I didn't know the answer, and he told us, can I add my honey to something? Does it destroy the medicinal benefit of that honey? If you can put your finger in whatever it is, the tincture, if your finger can tolerate it, then it won't destroy the beneficial qualities of that honey. That's what you can tell your customers. So if you're making tea, wait till it cools off a little bit, so that you're not losing the beneficial factors of that honey. Every civilization really, up to now, has mostly used honey only they eat it, but they use it for medicinal purposes, not for culinary purposes. But they use it, more than we do. It's 90% effective at wound healing, which is cool. Has anybody here ever tried it on a wound? I have. It's amazing. And honeydew honeys, I don't want to brag about spotted lanternfly, but there is a benefit.
I hear an objection.
Well, medicine's not delicious. It is way more medicinal than floral-based honeys. So honeys that come from flowers, honeydew honeys are way more medicinal. And he's been doing some measurements as compared to Manuka honey, which, the big bucks. Manuka honey, you know why Manuka honey is expensive? They have good people to promote. They have good promoters. It's better than Manuka. It's way better than Manuka. So, when the spotted lanternfly gets here, and we're all getting spotted lanternfly honeys, you're not going to be able to make medical claims, but people's going to know if we do our good job on promoting it. So spend some time promoting it. Local honey is 4 times more potent than any honey you can buy in the grocery store medicinally. And here's your picture. If someone is buying for medical purposes, here's the 3 things you want to buy. You want to buy local, number 1. Number 2, you want dark honeys. And number 3, honeys that are in the comb are better than honeys that are extracted. Which I didn't know. I thought that was fascinating. Oh no, I do have another one. Oh yeah, this is the last one. This is something for you to think about because he had no explanation at all. I said, viruses are delicious. This is Dr. Simone Finkstrom from the USDA Baton Rouge lab. And he was testing, can honeybees detect viruses in food? And if they do, how do they react to them? And he did it in the lab, and he started his field trials already. And he was using 3 different viruses. He was looking at the deformed wing, black queen cell, and chronic bee paralysis viruses. And unfortunately, they preferred, especially in the fall, these syrups that had viruses in them. I don't know why he had no explanation whatsoever because the study is still ongoing. However, they can detect them, and this is a significant difference. And they prefer the virus-laden foods. And I don't know why, but perhaps you can think about it, write a grant, and get some money and do some research. But these sometimes it's just just don't know why they do what they do. But this is my contact information. And now, Lord, that is a 304 number. That is not please don't call 204 and ask about the Ebola virus. That's a typo. But I thought I fixed it. I don't know, maybe I dreamed that I fixed it. I did take a nap before I came here. It's been a long day for me. I was in Martinsburg this morning. So, are there any questions? Please call me with anything. If you can't find the directions for submitting honeybee samples, and that's something that is always open to you. I mean, if you're just curious, you're not having a problem, you're curious, like, do I have any of those envelopes? You know, you can send a sample whenever you want. We are still looking for a couple participants for a honeybee survey. So I'm not looking for one for Mon County, but if you're in a different county, let me know if you're interested. We do viral counts and things like that. It's kind of fun data to get. Mike can back me up on that. It's kind of a fun data set. Please let me know. Is there any other questions about anything with the department? We're trying to get a new database. I don't know what's going to happen before registration season. Reminder, register your bees. Registration, if they're not registered, you can register them now. It's not too late, it's never too late. But the new registration period, we will open up probably in May. Your current registration is good through the end of June. And you don't have to renew your registration before then. But if you want to, you can. I don't know if the new database will be up and available by then, but I've had some requests about people like, do I have to fill out my address every single time? Like, with the new database, I'll try to make it so that you don't have to. I'm at the behest of the IT department, so I can ask for it. If they do it, they do it. If they don't, they don't. But I'll ask. And I've also been asked to, you know, when you register, you can request to be on a swarm list or a cutout list, a nuke producer list, so that someone can go and say, who's selling nukes? So that person has said, if Kevin says I'm selling nukes, if he has to be on that list, then the public would have access to your information. And you should sell your nukes pretty quickly. And I think that's a great idea. I had that suggestion at the executive meeting, and I'm like, yeah, I think we could probably do that. So it is no different than the cutout list or the swarm list. But is there any questions? Did I go over an all time?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
On them Baroxen strips,
Uh-huh.
did they put them on after the honey flood?
These right here. He's talking about the Baroxen. The question is, the Baroxen strips. You can use them whenever that you want, but the suggestion from the research that came out of this particular, the results that came out of this particular research was to use them at the end of the honey harvest season. Usually when someone says that, it's more like, it's not a knockdown treatment. You know, some treatments like, I call Formic like the sucker punch of my medication treatment world. It's not like that. It's more gentler, I guess is the word.
The thing I know is, I use Formic Pro, but you know, you're supposed to use that in July and all that. It's so hot you can't use it.
It's a good spring treatment. I like it in spring. And now it's in the fall.
That's why I use it.
This medication is available. I think you can buy it at Foxhound Bee Company. If you not come on them online, they have it available in that Emaflex, which has been really kind of hard to find. Emaflex is the new Emitraz treatment. It kind of looks like a caulking gun. That's what I call it. It's like a caulking gun. We've had a little trouble getting it available, but the Foxhound Bee Company has it. But you do have to have a restricted use pesticide license to purchase it. Has anybody here bought theirs? I got mine last year. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, you can, but the company said that they anticipate that they're trying to get that taken away through the EPA, and it might be available for purchase without the restricted use pesticide license. So hopefully that happens.
Chandra, you know how many people, now that people are getting in their hives and that, do you recommend anybody, you can't tell what caused it, to do a might wash on a sample?
Yes, so she's talking about doing an autopsy, right? I mean, our hive has died. Guess what? We can still learn from it. But you gotta be able to be critical, potentially on yourself. And so you should, if there's dead bees and they haven't completely absconded and gone, you can do a mite wash on the dead bees. You can also collect a sample to send to the bee lab. That's kind of helpful because they'll do, not only will they also do a mite count for you, they will do a nosema count as well. Hopefully, tracheal, I'm gonna cross my fingers. But yes, you can do a mite wash on dead bees. And then also look at things like, you can usually see where the cluster was. How big was the cluster? That's important. And you know, it's like, well, they were too small. Why were they too small? They shouldn't have been too small. So we're going to analyze that too. But were they touching honey? Because we just came through that extreme cold spell. I don't know how cold it was here, but in my house it was -16. Those bees cannot move when it's minus. They're not going to be able to go, oh, there's some honey over there near the door. I'm going to go get it. They can't move. They can't go over there and get it. So if they're stuck in that spot for too long and they're not, the outer edges of the cluster aren't touching the honey, so you can see where your honey is, where the cluster was. They could have starved or froze to death because they couldn't reach the honey. And then you got to say, why was that cluster too small? So now we're stepping back into fall management, what we did in the fall, affecting what we're seeing now. And that is, maybe the mite loads were too high. Maybe they didn't make enough brood to make a good sized winter cluster. What could we have done? Well, we could have done our different mite treatments. We could have combined colonies. Like there's always something you could have potentially done differently. And you've got to be willing to say, what could I have done differently? And I want you to please, okay, first off, thank you for people who registered last year and reported honey production numbers. Awesome. It was a matter of, our honey production reported numbers, and I know it was just it's more people reporting, but it went up 108% so the numbers you reported last year were the honey production numbers for 2023. So that went up 108% as to what people were reporting previously. So thank you for that. Continue, because we want accurate data for West Virginia. And also, please report losses. When you don't push ego and pride aside and report losses, because we need to capture what happened during the drought. So when you go to register this spring, report your losses, because I want to see, because what we're seeing, some of these deaths we're seeing, honeybees are incredibly sensitive. So we're probably seeing a result of effect on diet and stores from the drought combined with that cold snap. So we're seeing a couple of things going on, but drought is definitely a portion of what we're seeing, because if we had to supplement or if they were brooding down or whatever it was, there were effects. It's impossible not to be. Honeybees are tremendously affected by weather. But yes, report loss numbers. Any other? Yes.
Two questions, one quick, one not. For the Noroa, I know it's not out yet, but do you have any sense of costs?
That's a very good question. So Noroa, so the RNAi treatment, what's the cost? And I think it's going to be 10-ish a treatment, $10-ish a treatment. I think they're gonna end up recommending multiple treatments. So it's probably going to be about $20 a treatment. So, but like anything else, it's most expensive when it first comes out, and it'll probably be adjusted over time.
And then just an update, my understanding, I was involved with forestry and natural resources in retired, but it used to be, let's say 10 years ago or whatever, imidacloprid there was kind of debate about it. It had been banned in Europe, but not here. And we got into a lot of conversations with folks that manage Pittsburgh's forests. And they were sort of insistent that there really wasn't a consistent effect of midichlorians on honeybees.
Okay.
And, well, I'm retired now, and I just wondered if that's involved.
There was one study, so I can definitely give you some information on this, that I did not include because I'm like, control yourself, I'm getting, this presentation is getting too big. There was a study, so a couple years ago, there was massive losses in Florida. And the USDA went down there and they sampled colonies and tried to figure out what's going on here. And they measured all the chemicals that they found in hive, including varroicides, everything that they were exposed to. And even though the neonicotinoids, in particular imidacloprid, was found in, I think it was like, I can't remember the exact thing, it was something like 16% of the colonies, or 16% of the samples, it accounted for 99% of the risk. And so they think that even though they can't say, aha, it was 100% that, they attributed risk to every single thing that they found, and 99% of the risk was from that particular chemical. And they were even finding entombed cells. If you don't know what an entombed cell is, if you're in your beehive and you're looking at the comb, and you see a cell that's filled in, but it's not like wax, or it's not like bee bread, it's filled in with wax. That's an entombed cell that the bees have shut the door and put up warning tape, and they're not ever going to use that cell again. But if you ever dig into an entombed cell, I have, sometimes there's bee bread in there. And there's something wrong with it, and so they were closing the door off. That they found a lot of entombed cells. When you find those, of course they're going to sample them. But yeah, it was a midichlorian found in a lot of those colonies.
Just for people's, if you're interested, midichlorian is used a lot in nurseries, pre-nurseries.
It's a neonicotinoid pesticide.
Yeah, it's like a systemic.
Yes.
You put it in, and it goes up to the plant.
It's systemic, yeah, isn't it usually on the coating of the seed or in they plant the seed and it gets into the system and it's long lasting and it ends up in the pollen and it ends up in things that our bees are interested in. But yeah, and it is a problem. It's still a problem. All right, oh, yes.
I just wondered, so the bees, cap that cell off and say, are there other things that they do? Like when we have the pandemic, we wash our hands and we wear masks and we quarantine, but all these.
Can bees self-medicate? That's what I'm hearing.
Can they take, what do they do to take care of themselves with all of this?
That's a good question.
Do they make vaccines?
They do not, but it's usually time, and if, there's some debate on whether bees can, like especially if it's viruses, if they're sick, can they forage differently? Can they choose, because we know that pollens and nectar, they have different compositions. It's not known whether they do or not. There's some hypotheses that they do. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe some bees do better than other bees. I'm not sure. But what we should do is rotate wax, especially if we live in a place where they may be exposed to more pesticides. Like I imagine sometimes if your bees are in town, if property owners are using a lot of pesticides on their lawns, maybe your bees could be exposed more. Thinking about rotating wax out, just watch your bees. bees will talk to you. And you're seeing into themselves, I would take that wax out, like get rid of that. Don't use it in lip balm. The bees are like, please don't, put it in a can, I would probably just destroy it. That's something good to do, rotating wax. But typically on average, West Virginia is not a bad state for pesticides and wax. Our commercials get exposed to a lot of pesticides when they're doing commercial pollination, but not the average citizen. I think the average commercial has 17 chemicals in their wax. That's probably not. Mike, you can report back on this next year because we're gonna sample his wax this year.
I was just gonna say, I'm trying to think if our Ava survey had it.
Which he's not a commercial, which is cool. So what we saw that was super interesting was like all of our wax samples come back and I'm like, what in the world? There was coumaphos in like almost all of the samples, and there was fluvalinate in beekeepers that I know are 100% not using those mite medications. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And my only theory is that it's coming from foundation that we're buying. And so I don't think you use foundation. So we're going to find out this year and see how many chemicals Mike has, and he better not have coumaphos and fluvalinate. I'm gonna be like, where is that coming from? So we're gonna use him as an experimental guinea pig. He's my guinea pig this year. I'm curious. Like you would think he was in every single beekeeper in West Virginia that had their wax sample, and I'm like, they're not using that. I guess it's in the foundation, the commercial foundation. It's extremely long lasting. When I was telling you earlier, you want to be careful, even though it's saying it was effective, moderately effective against trophy, it's going to get in your wax. It is 100% going to get in your wax. And there's going to be residual effects, which is why it's not used much anymore. It lasts a long time. I'll be hanging out after the meeting if anybody has questions they don't want to ask in front of the group, because I will stay to that, but I'm super tired. I teach at a pesticide regulatory class in Martinsburg this morning. All right, Mike, you have other things?
I do. Thank
Did
you
I go
so
a long time?
much.
I'm sorry.
You can take the whole time. I feel like we just got to go to a whole conference and get every single breakout session all in one time. This is always one of my favorite talks of the year, because when you go to events like that, you don't get to hear everything. And even if you do get to hear everything, you don't get like the condensed, like human version. You get this like big scientific version that's hard to understand. So thank you so much for coming and doing this for us again. We really appreciate you. Oh my gosh, you can plug this back. You didn't answer that. Go sit down and have a nap. All right, and you didn't go over, but we were going to be here till 8 anyway. But that just means I have to talk fast for my section, and the stuff that I talk about is really boring anyway. So we can get through it. We come here to learn about bees, so we did our job today. Check that off the box. We'll start with old business, and I don't have much of it here since we're just getting started for the year. Make sure you're registered. Make sure you're registered online if you paid in person, because we have a lot of services that you will gain access to by registering online. We have signups already for treatments for the summertime, for ProSuite, for queens if we end up doing a queen order. So if you're interested in any of those things, you can do that all through our website. You can also do that here at any of our meetings. Just let us know that you're interested and we'll put you on the list. And you get monthly newsletters. And if you're not seeing those, please make sure you check your spam and junk mail. Your spam and junk mail. That's it for old business. The only other thing I think I wanted to mention with old business, I forgot while I was sitting over there, because Shanda just went through too many topics and I got too interested in too many of them. So if anybody thinks of anything that I missed from last year, let me know. But I don't think there's too much crazy that we've had going on here recently. Amy, you got a treasurer's report for us?
I think the only difference is what you're seeing is what's coming in from the interview class. People started to roll in for registration. We had a speaker reimbursement fee come in, and then the club dues. So, kind of doing the taxes and the end of the year reports, so leave those in.
Yes, and that's what you see for the stuff going out. We're filing all of our 2024 taxes. Squarespace costs us however much a year to make sure that we have a website and all the resources that we provide digitally for everyone, so that's what all that stuff is. Any questions on the balance?
If you do have any, we talked before about an old business about creating a library. If you have any interesting titles that you'd like us to start accumulating for our, in-house library for books, send them to any one of the officers.
Any of our officers, yeah, absolutely. We do actually have, I don't want to say a nice selection, but we have an okay selection back there. So if anybody wants to do some reading, feel free to check out some of the books that we do have. And if you're thinking about it on a day that's not today, let one of us know. This center is always here. It's not always open, but we can always get somebody in here to get stuff for us. They're very gracious, or we're very gracious to the folks here for them letting us use it the way that they do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Deb is not here to do the state report this evening, but I will do it for her. There's not a whole lot going on the state level aside from, the conference. The conference is coming up on March 28th and 29th, 2025. Registration is actually open now on Marion County's website, which is mcbawv.com/registration, right? Yeah, is that right? Okay. You can also register from our website. If you go to the Mon County Beekeepers website, I actually put a link directly on one of the tabs that you can go to register from. I wanted to make it easy for folks so that they could register as quickly as possible. It looks like it's going to be a great event with a lot of great speakers. They gave a report at the State Association meeting over the weekend. They have quite a few vendors rolling in as well, so hopefully it'll be a nice event for everybody. If you've never eaten Apple Annie's, I know for sure lunch is going to be good.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
we also have t-shirts.
Oh, yeah, and when you go to register, there are t-shirts that you can purchase directly through registration. And it's all tied in there with registration. They make it really, really simple.
$15.
15 for the t-shirts, yep. Which, it didn't say that on here, that's why I mentioned that. Yeah, they're 15 and they have the logo, which I don't have on here, on them, correct? The No Hives Left Behind logo.
And it's on the back.
Yep, and it's on the website as well, you can see all that stuff. This was from the Save the Date, I didn't update it, I'm sorry. Oh, and then I'm gonna go back. We also have our beginner beekeeping course, March 16th and 23rd, from 1 to 4 p.m. That's 2 different Sundays. We actually, when we got our committees together over the winter, we decided that for March, because of a date conflict with the center here, we couldn't have our meeting on our normal day. So what we're asking folks for March, we would like to have all of our members try to attend one of those classes, one of those 2 days. You can attend both if you'd like. They're free to anyone who wants to come as far as members are concerned. But the reason we ask members to come is one, because some of that beginner information gets rusty if you haven't heard it in a while. It's nice to learn new things. And 2, we end up with 70 plus beekeepers here, new beekeepers that have a lot of questions. And the more of us that are here to answer those questions, the easier that question and answer session becomes. Keeps us from being here till 6 p.m. So anyone who wants to come out and learn with us, we really would appreciate it on that March 16th and 23rd date. We also have a vendor showcase coming up on April 6th. Vendors rolling in for that, which is really, really cool. We'll have a lot of our local folks here. We're going to have Bearsville Bees. We have the USDA, probably the WDA. I don't know. I haven't got 100% confirmation from them yet, but I think that they're going to be here. The State Association will have a booth. Did I say the Conservation District? We're going to have the Conservation District here. Just a lot of local folks with programs that we as beekeepers can sign up for, as well as beekeeping vendors that we can get some equipment from. So if you guys have anyone that you want to be there or you want to go ahead and sign up for that, that's online as well. You can sign up for that through our website. You don't have to sign up, it's free, just so you know. But if you do sign up, we do door prizes all day. So anyone who signs up can get door prizes. Please tell your friends. Any questions?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Our beginner beekeeping class.
Yes.
How many we got signed up?
15 or 20 so far. Yeah. It normally trickles in slow at the beginning, and then like the last week and a half, 4 million people sign up, and I don't have enough books. So it's trickling in slow so far, but I had 2 people that signed up in like March of last year. Like right after we did it, they signed up, and they've been signed up since. So I had to roll them over to the new registration, but people are signing up now, and if you guys want to help get the word out, there are some advertisements on social media. For those of you that do social media, please share our posts because that helps us get new folks to come to these classes. If you don't do the social media thing and you know any place that will allow us to put flyers, most places don't let us do that anymore around here, but if you know any places, I have flyers. So I will give you those and we can get them put out that way as well. Any other questions?
Just when you're done, like, would you put the newsletter slide back up so I can,
Oh, this one?
when you're done?
Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. Any other questions about the class or the showcase? And if you know any vendors that want to be a part of it, Elisa in the back is actually helping me put that together. So let her know. I think we've got, we sent out a million emails. So we've got a lot of people that are in the talks to come. But if you know of anybody specific that you'd like to see, let us know. Association of the Year. Every year, the West Virginia Beekeepers Association does an Association of the Year award. I forget how much money you win, but there's a cash prize for the association if we do win. And it just, the criteria for it is just all of the work that we've done throughout the last year. So how many beginners came to our beginner class, how many classes we had, how many people went and talked at different public events, things like that. So if you did any public outreach throughout the last year, let us know. You can either send me an email, let me know here, we'll write it down. All of that stuff just goes towards helping us show that we are an active part of the organization and in turn get funding for being such. Any questions? Awesome. Make sure to update and register your hives.
Yes.
See? It's in there. And you can call, that's Paxton's number. He's our local guy. I know Shanda gave you her stuff. His has a 3 in it. But you can call him if you need help, if you have questions. I know folks are doing autopsies at this time of year. I'm sure he'd be happy to help with some of that stuff too if you get in there and you're like, I don't know what I'm thinking at. Always happy to help. For our sellers, if you were planning on selling bees this year, I have a piece of paper sitting right over here. Please put your name and contact information on that list. I will give that to Paxton, and then, like Shanda mentioned, they kind of start with the sellers first, and then they go through them. So that will allow us to kind of get him that information right up front, so he knows where to start. You can also reach out to him directly, but I'll have this listed for you as well. All right, what time is it? What are we talking about this?
7:50.
Woo! Okay, we'll make this really quick. At our last meeting, the first meeting in January, it was a virtual meeting. We talked about the bylaws and club offerings. And one thing that was brought up is that we need to consider changing this section of our bylaws. So we're not going to go over all the bylaws here tonight. You'll notice that's the only slide that I put in here. It's just Article 3, Section 2. The reason that it was brought up as a concern is because we have 3 officers that are going to be ending their ability to continue as officers this year. The way our current bylaws are set, each of us are allowed to have it's 4 consecutive 1-year terms, and that is it. There's no interim president, interim vice president, any of that stuff in our bylaws. And which is absolutely fine. We don't need to have that, but we do need to consider making some sort of staggered difference so that we're not losing 4 people all at once and having to change the entire set of folks every 4 years. One suggestion that was made was that we have one of our current officers stay on for an extra year to meet with where our secretary is right now, because that would put those terms the same. Another suggestion was that we shorten one of our incoming officers' potential positions. So instead of, with a potential of 4 consecutive years, we do, let's say, the treasurer at 3 consecutive years for the next time. That way it evens out, or the vice president or the president. We couldn't come to a general consensus at the last meeting, and we decided we wanted to talk with more folks here at our next meeting. Now, we don't have a lot of time to talk about this evening, so I'd be happy to table this until our next meeting. This isn't something we have to figure out right now. None of us are going anywhere until next year. So if anyone has any suggestions, I'm happy to consider them, or happy to talk about them here. If we want to think about it some more, I'm happy to table it for another month. It's whatever you guys want to do, of course.
I think in lieu of time, everybody should ponder on this and give us a thought, because we are all leaving at the end of the year, so decisions need to be made. But we can start off with that.
At our next meeting. Okay. So can I get a motion to move this to our March meeting? We don't have a March meeting, so this will actually be our April meeting.
Okay, take that back and talk amongst yourselves.
We do not have a March meeting, not a formal March meeting. We'll have the 2 beginner classes and the conference in March. We can do it in April. I don't think that the timing is such that, it'll be an issue if we don't talk about it until April, okay?
Well, what you may do is type up the couple proposed options and send those out to the membership in March, and then everybody be prepared to vote on it in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
So currently I have 2 proposed options. Those were the only 2 that came up at the last meeting. Were there any other suggestions for how we might stagger, or how we should go about it? Actually, the 3rd suggestion was we do nothing. There was somebody that suggested that we leave it as is and let it play out, because things have worked out and they probably likely will. And that's very true, and a very valid suggestion. So if I can put that as his 3rd one, but were there any other suggestions? Do you have any ideas that I should consider? If not, I will stick with those 3 and then I'll put them.
Do most people want to be in a 4 consecutive terms, or?
So it's 4 1-year terms. So they vote every year. Technically, you could only serve 1 year if you wanted to, but you can't serve any more than 4.
But do most people want to serve those 4 consecutive terms?
I don't know.
The people before I served 4 consecutive.
Yes.
So far, we're on our 4th.
Yes. This comes to our 4th.
So far.
Yes. And not because of want or lack of want, just because that's what happened. Nobody said, "Hey, I want that possession instead of you." And of course, we enjoy doing what we do, so we do it until we don't get to do it anymore, right? That's just kind of how it works out. But like I said, there's just no contingencies in place for what happens if nobody wants to do it, or if if we all leave at the same time and then 4 new people come in and we're not here to help. Then who has to pick up the pieces and figure it all out, right? If we stagger them a little bit, then at least only 2 people are leaving at a time.
Can you go from president to vice president?
There is no rule against changing, swapping positions. So in theory, you could shuffle the jets, right? Absolutely.
That may eliminate some issues if you went from president to vice president, and that way you're still there knowing what's going on, but you can help the new president, and then,
Right, yeah, if they voted, so then that would be when nomination time comes, which I think is August, September, we start taking nominations. You would just nominate whoever you wanted to nominate for whatever position that wasn't the one that they already had, right? Which that's an option as well. So I'll include those 4 options then, which that one would be just leaving it as it is, really. And then I'll try to send something out sometime this month, so folks, or sometime between this month and next month, so that folks can review and have some time to kind of ponder it, and then we'll revisit this in April. Sound good? Awesome, thank you guys, I appreciate that. All right, looking forward, oh my gosh, that schedule's so small on my computer. Good thing the screen's giant. All right, so we have our beekeeping class, March 16th and 23rd. Please come, we would love to have you guys. March 28th and 29th is our West Virginia Beekeepers Association Spring Conference. You can see there it says register now, click here, that's what it's gonna look like when you get your newsletter. So don't click there, but click there, right? Our April club meeting is beekeeping best practices. Christian will be talking about best practices for your bee yard. That was something that got tabled from last year, so we're excited to hear him talk about that. And April 6th is our vendor showcase. We just talked about that a little bit, so if you want to be involved in that, even just as a volunteer, we're going to need volunteers that day, so please let me know. I'll send out more information about that in advance as well, I promise. May club meeting, we're gonna have a workshop on being a beekeeper. That'll be about all of the things that are kind of ancillary to what we normally talk about here. So setting up at a market, what that's like, registering your hives, we'll have some talk about that. We'll talk about labeling requirements, we'll talk about all of the kind of things that we don't normally get to talk about, but always raise a lot of questions. So we're gonna spend some time talking about that in May. Our June club meeting is a workshop on treatments. That's become kind of a staple for June because with so many new treatment options constantly coming out and us only doing treatments so many times a year, it's good to have refreshers and keep up on how that stuff works so that we're all comfortable doing it when the time comes. And I didn't give you guys any more information than June because that's enough. So, any questions? All right. Well, if you guys have any, you can always get a hold of us. You know how to get in touch with us. We're always around. But without any further ado, let's do some door prizes and go home. What? Oh, the slide. Yes, sorry. Thank you. There it is. There you go. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you for the donated door prizes. We have a Be Happy kitchen towel this evening with his nomies. Did you draw? And the winner is 215. Red ticket 215. There you go. Congratulations. Thank you. All right. And then I'm going to give away 2 of these this evening. This is, I don't even know what this is. Amy, do you know what this is?
Oh, I do. So I know.
Okay, good.
I got these when I was at, the Bee Expo, American Bee Expo. And so, not that we're gonna have any, but in case you have a swarm. You can stay up those big ladders. So you get your extension pole, painter's pole, and you screw this onto the painter's pole, then you put your frame in here. So and then this cinches it down, you put it in here. So then you're just lifting your frame up to get the bees to crawl on that, a drawn comb, and got some scent left on from behind when the bees left, wherever you took this from, your hive or whatever. And then you can bring it down and dump it in a bucket, as opposed to have a swinging bucket, and then you bring it all full, and then right here it dumps out and so forth, because low ones, I'm sure people would just put the frame on the ground in a bush and they crawl off. This way, this keeps it on here tight, and you can reach really, really far, and hopefully no injuries.
I'm not going to pretend I have not taped a frame to the end of a really long pole. So that's a really good idea.
But if this already a long thing, you can't really.
Yes, brilliant idea. All right, well, who's going to win it? This one?
Yeah. There's 2 of them.
We're going to do 2 of them. This one's 215.
You just did that.
Oh, it must have been this one. Sorry. 241. Woo!
Thank you.
What's that number? Congratulations.
213.
Oh.
213. Oh, congratulations. All right. And I believe, did you get what you needed there from that side? Very good. Okay.
Very good.
I believe that's it for the evening. Thank you guys so much. Wait, hold up. Oh, I lied. Sit down. Charlie's got something to say.
Hey, I'm going back up to Ashland, Kentucky, or Ashland, Ohio, at the Amish country, and buy bee products. You know, your boxes, frames, tops, bottoms, and all that. So I've got some things here. You can look at them. Let me know, because I'm going up, and I can pick it up for you.
When are you going?
I'm thinking about the third week in March. I thought April, but I thought, well,
You won't get it any cheaper than that.
no.
Yeah.
I promise you that.
Assembled or non-assembled?
No, well, you can get both, but
I'll let Paul nonsense. Yeah,
it's hard to haul it when it's assembled,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I have.
Yeah.
Anybody want to, thing? Yep.
You never get it, it's not like.
You want one?
They're leaving. They're moving. Those people?
And I'm just.
Yeah, they're moving,
Extra for me going up there.
Michigan. But apparently one of their family members is taking over for them.
Yeah, there's like two times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you gotta, if you're going go up there, you can mail this to him, you can check and everything. And
Oh, okay.
Wait,
You left there, Charlie?
yeah. I had 50 of them made.
Thanks, Charlie.
I'm gonna go up to Preston County and let them know. But the only thing raised on was, frame, they raised up the nickel. Hey,
By the time he